Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sharpening Report. By popular request, we are going to talk about how CERN might play a role in future end times prophecy. Now, I recently did a video on the occult history of CERN, and I asked you all if you'd like to see more to let me know in a comment, and many of you did. And if you didn't catch last week's video, don't worry, you'll be able to understand this one just fine. Now, before we get into it, I should mention I have covered this in other videos before, but it's been a long time and we've gotten a lot of new subscribers since then. So if you haven't subscribed, please hit the bell, subscribe, hit the bell to turn on all notifications. Your subscriptions really do help. And if you think that you're subscribed, double check, because I've been getting a lot of reports from people saying that they thought they were subscribed, but then when they went and checked, it turned out they weren't and they had to resubscribe. So unfortunately, it's just one of those YouTube games that they play. So make sure you're subscribed. And so, all that being said, let's get into it. So, it's this idea of CERN, future prophecy, opening the abyss, demonic communications between dimensions, all of this stuff that we're going to talk about today. It really starts with the graviton. Now, the graviton is possibly one of the strangest theoretical particles ever hypothesized. Gravitons have never been directly observed, but physicists are confident in their existence because of the presence of the gravitational field. So it's possible that a soon discovery might take place by means of particle colliders, such as what we're going to talk about today, the LHC at CERN, the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. Gravitons are the particles responsible for gravity, obviously. Gravity in itself is still really mysterious in a lot of ways, but due to scientific advancements, the world might not be far off from the holy grail of physics, which would be definitive proof that the graviton actually exists and the means to study its properties. Now, what makes the graviton especially interesting is its apparent ability to flow freely between dimensions. Of course, all of this, we haven't observed this happening, but all of the math around the graviton points to this having to be the case. And among other potential discoveries, the graviton is at the top of the LHC's to-do list. So the idea is not just to look for the graviton itself, but to look for a gap where particles should be after a collision. That's one way to do this. If they're transferring into other dimensions, we should see gaps where they should be. So the two particle detectors of the LHC, which are called CMS and Atlas, are able to show us the aftermath of a particle collision. And as in any collision, debris is thrown out and distributed fairly evenly. If, however, the detector shows a gap where debris or new and exotic particles should be, but aren't, then that could be evidence that they've escaped into a higher dimension. Now, there's an idea that gravitons could be used as a way to communicate with beings of higher dimensions. Now, that might sound like the stuff of science fiction, but physicists today are seriously considering this possibility. If gravitons are discovered and used as a way to communicate with beings of higher dimensions or parallel universes, this might be what tells the world that we are not alone. Now, while many are waiting for a type of disclosure event in which, otherworldly beings present themselves and their spacecraft to humanity, we might be surprised to find that these beings end up presenting themselves in a different way, and this might be with an established communication via gravitons. So in September of 2015, for the first time ever, gravitational waves were detected. Before that time, gravity waves, gravitons, and the gravitational quantum field, they've all been speculative and theoretical. Gravitons have never been directly observed. The effects of the gravitational field are seen every day, of course. When you drop a ball, it falls. But without actually observing the waves or particles of gravity itself, there's a limit to what can be learned and accomplished. But now that waves of gravity have actually been detected now, 9-10 years ago, there's no telling what the ramifications could be. So the detection was achieved by LIGO, the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. The actual waves were created by the merging of two black holes. One, the mass of 29 suns, and the other, the mass of 36 suns. Each black hole is estimated as being roughly 30 miles in diameter. Now, gravity waves are so incredibly weak that it takes an extremely sensitive detector like LIGO to be able to detect them. LIGO can measure distortions as small as 1/1000th the size of a proton. The gravity waves LIGO detected lasted only 1/5 of a second. But even more amazing, the detection happened at greater than a 5 sigma standard of proof, which basically everything in science, everything in quantum physics is based on percentages. How likely is this to be true? So they have an extremely high standard, and 5 sigma is extremely high. So that's basically like this is extremely likely to be true. Like it's not even, it's almost not even worth considering that it's not true. Like it can't just be a fluke. I should mention too, if you want the show notes to this episode and many others that we do, you can go to dailyrenegade.com and become a member, and you can download the PDF. When you go to the video page, the actual video page of whatever video you're looking at, under the description, you'll see a little link that you can download a PDF. These are all the show notes and all the information, so you can follow along. You can have it available. You can read it. You have all the material there if that interests you. And I've just started doing that with some interviews too. Those are just transcripts, and I've only done a couple of them, but those are some of those are available too. But I do have the show notes for this episode at dailyrenegade.com. You can download that PDF and have all of this available. So on one hand, this discovery is really exciting. For us as Christians, it's an aspect of God's creation that has been detected. Another piece of his grand design can now be understood a little bit better. But this could turn into troubling news if and when mankind decides to use this knowledge for dangerous and potentially disastrous goals. So what will this discovery bring? Well, David Wright's executive director, of LIGO has said, what's really exciting is what comes next. I think we're opening a window on the universe, a window of gravitational wave astronomy. Kip Thorne, Caltech's Richard P. Feynman Professor of Theoretical Physics, Emeritus, is also quoted as saying something nearly identical, that this discovery is opening a new window into the universe. Gravitational wave astronomy and new branches of quantum physics are interesting windows, of course, but what of some other windows that might be opened? Well, this brings us back to the goal of certain physicists to develop a gravitational communication system. There are steps towards that goal that must be taken, of course, but this has been in the talks for a really long time, years and years. There was a clip from a documentary I saw 15 years ago, maybe, that was talking about it. This is how this would work. First would be the confirmed discovery of gravitational waves and or gravitons themselves. Next would be learning to repeat the detection in a lab by creating gravitons or gravity waves. They would do this by putting Einstein's general theory to the test directly and experimentally. Once that's accomplished, there will be enough information to go on to learn how to manipulate the gravitons themselves. And that's not far-fetched. They can already manipulate a lot of particles today and have been able to for quite a while. Now, interestingly enough, the detection of gravitational waves occurred in September of 2015, but wasn't officially announced until 6 months later on February 11th, 2016. Now, I don't believe that was like a nefarious thing. They weren't trying to hide something, but they took that much time to just really show that this is true, to get the percentages up even more. To prove, like, yes, this is true, this is happening, this is not a fluke in the machine, this isn't just some background noise that the machine is detecting as something that it's not. Things like that can happen very, very rarely, but they're not going to happen time and time again in the exact same way. So they spent 6 months looking at all this to bring up that sigma up to 5 sigma or whatever, to bring the percentages up to really prove that this is true. They didn't want to have a fluke, think it's true, announce it, and then be embarrassed when all the peer-reviewed stuff turns out that it was not what they said it was, especially something this big. So them waiting 6 months, I don't believe that was nefarious at all. They were just trying to be careful. But this does lead us to wonder that, what else has been accomplished and not yet announced. Could these discoveries spur on the opening of the abyss in Revelation chapter 9? Only time will tell, but by the looks of it, we're not too far off from knowing for sure. So this leads us to wonder what the world might look like after interdimensional communication is established. And the way that it works, I might be getting ahead of myself in my notes, but I don't remember if I actually wrote in my notes how, like, the actual process of how this works. Basically, what it would be, if you can manipulate gravitons, you can manipulate their spin, and they only spin. They can spin one of two ways. So what you can do is create a line of gravitons and adjust the spin, one up, two down, two up, one down, whatever, to create a type of Morse code. And then send, because they can naturally do this, send that string of gravitons into another dimension, set up a detector, and then wait for a response. That's roughly kind of the idea. It's more sophisticated than that, but that's basically the idea on how they could send a communication to another dimension. Again, I don't remember if I put it in my notes or not, but and if I did, I'll just read what I wrote. But just for quick understanding of how something like that would work, that's the idea. So let's say that they're actually able to do that. Well, what would the world look like after interdimensional communication is established? And by the way, for all we know, we don't know if this has already been done. I don't think so. I think that if you need to have gravitons, and I don't think that they would keep that discovery hidden, because anybody who can successfully detect a graviton, they're getting the Nobel Prize. Like, no way that they're not getting the Nobel Prize. So physicists really do want to do this. Like, then they want to make it public. Anyway, so after communication, after a communication is established, what might that look like? Well, let's read Revelation 9:1 through 3. It says, "And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power." Okay, so the first thing to notice is that this occurs when the fifth angel sounds. In my book, Cherubim Chariots, which is available right now with my other book, Quantum Creation, is a set. You can get that at prophecywatchers.com. It's the best place to get it. Please don't get it from Amazon. Get it from Prophecy Watchers. But in that book, Cherubim Chariots, I explore the possibility of the number of cherubim faces in Ezekiel's vision representing spatial dimensions. And we'll look at that in this episode a bit later. But if we include time, it is correct to say that we are four-dimensional beings. We have three dimensions of space and one of time. So if we follow that logic, we might have a reference to a being of an extra dimension in the fifth trumpet of Revelation, 4 of space and 1 of time, equaling 5. I also write in Cherubim Chariots about the theory that when the rebellious angels fell from heaven, that they might have fallen to what we would call the fourth spatial dimension. Again, that's the fourth spatial dimension. So we're not including time in that classification. We're just looking at dimensions of space. So the angel sounding the trumpet is likely not a fallen angel, but instead signaling that a fallen angel is about to come into the picture. And the rest of the verse of Revelation 9 states, "And I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit." So this is no ordinary star. According to our modern vernacular, any star that would fall onto the earth would utterly destroy the earth. There does seem to be a connection between stars and angels, and at times the word star can actually represent an angel. We see that in Revelation 1:20, which says, "The mystery of the 7 stars which thou sawest in my right hand, and the 7 golden candlesticks." The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 candlesticks which thou sawest are 7 churches. And yes, as some have pointed out, that also might be talking about the church leaders themselves rather than angelic beings. It just depends on how that word in the Greek is used. But we can also see the star as being of some that this star is a being of some sort because of the words "unto him was given the key." So the star being referred to with the pronoun him shows that this is a person of some sort. Angelic being, it could be a person or being of four spatial dimensions rather than three. And this is most likely referring to a fallen angel. Now, verse 2 tells us that the angel opened the bottomless pit with the key. And the word key comes from the Greek word kleos and can be used as a metaphor for authority. So, in a sense, this fallen angel was given permission to open the bottomless pit. We also learn in Revelation 1:18 that Jesus Christ himself held the keys of death and hell, so most likely it was Jesus who granted this authority. Now, we may ask why Jesus would give permission for a fallen angel to open the bottomless pit. We might possibly find the answer in chapter 2, verses 2 through 11 in the book of Joel. It says, "A day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and a strong there hath not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness, yea, and nothing shall escape them. The appearance of them is as the appearance of horses, and as horsemen so shall they run. Like the noise of chariots on the tops of mountains shall they leap, like the noise of a flame of fire that devoureth the stubble, as a strong people set in battle array. Before their face the people shall be much pained, all faces shall gather blackness. They shall run like mighty men, they shall climb the wall like men of war, and they shall march every one on his ways, and they shall not break their ranks, neither shall one thrust another, they shall walk every one in his path, and when they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. They shall run to and fro in the city, they shall run upon the wall, they shall climb up upon the houses, they shall enter in at the windows like a thief. The earth shall quake before them, the heavens shall tremble, the sun and the moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. And the Lord shall utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very great, for he is strong that executeth his word, for the day of the Lord is great and very terrible, and who can abide it?" Okay, so we can learn a lot of truths in this passage. For our purposes here, we only need to note a couple of things. First, as we will see later in further detail, notice that this army is described in many of the same ways as the Locust army of Revelation 9, and is probably the same, though there's some contention about that we'll get into. But we also read in verse 8 of their immortality. It says, "When they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded," showing that these are likely angelic in nature. Now, whether fallen angels or not has yet to be determined in this video. I believe that these are fallen, but and why? I mean, given the description of the circumstances surrounding these beings, the sun, moon, and stars are darkened, clouds of thick darkness, etc. They seem to be the same locust beings from Revelation 9. But also notice that Joel 2:11 says that this is the Lord's army. How can this be? Well, there are times in the Bible where God will use the enemy for his own purposes. He's God. He's allowed to do that. After all, he's ultimately in control of these things anyway. He can use them as he sees fit. For example, in the book of Exodus, we read that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Exodus 9:12. We also read later in Revelation chapter 9, it says, "And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, Loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of men." So as we can see, there are times that the Lord will use the enemy to fulfill his own purposes, usually in the ways of judgment. The Locust army is no different. Now, I should mention, too, that some have pointed out a difference in these two descriptions. So the locusts in Revelation are commanded not to hurt any green thing, like plant life, but only to hurt those without the seal of God on their foreheads. The army in Joel is described like this: "A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness, yea, and nothing shall escape them." So it seems like the locusts in Joel are allowed to hurt the land, and the ones in Revelation are not. So how do we reconcile this? Well, the easy way would just be to point out that the Joel passage doesn't specifically say that the devouring fire is actually caused by the locusts themselves. That could be a secondary thing. It could also be that the land and the desolate wilderness could just be a way of describing people's provisions and supplies. It could be a way of saying, they had everything they wanted before the locusts came, and when they were done, they had nothing. Seemingly because they're in so much pain for 5 months that the only thing they're concerned with is their own deaths, but they can't even make that happen. So all their provisions, their wealth, all that stuff, those things would be pointless at that time. There's also a possibility that these are just two different armies altogether. In a recent interview I did with author Gary Wayne, I asked him this exact question, and this is what he had to say. Check this out. So a viewer on the Daily Renegade website actually posted a question that I hadn't thought about before. So when describing these things in Joel, one of the descriptions, it says, a fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them is a desolate wilderness, yea, and nothing shall escape them. So it makes it sound like they're destroying the wilderness, yet in Revelation 9, it says that they're not permitted to touch any green thing or anything. So yeah, what are yeah, so like, what are these things, and then how do you think about like those two passages?
Two different beings.
Okay.
Connected, but not the same. So, what we look at when we see it, I put this up in section 6 in a couple of the chapters for what I'm going to refer to as 2 columns. So I'll list the descriptions described in Joel 1 and 2 side by side with the descriptions of the riders and the horses in Revelation 9 and the 200 million man war. They're identical. But these are not humans. These are like chimera creatures. They're physical chimera creatures. And they are part of the DNA manipulation, I think, part of the rising military technology, and probably clone bodies that are chimera-like or giant-like for the terrible ones who are in the pit prison, that are the disembodied spirits of the worst of the giants that are coming out, and also chimera bodies for disembodied spirits that weren't in the pit prison. And if you want to know the passage where you can look at these terrible ones as the arete or the retim, as you go ones as in the plural, as in giant ones, or Nephilim, or Rephaim and Seraphim, the serpent ones, and using the male plural. You have these ones that are slain on the earth for doing terrible things, and you have like Tubal and Meshach in there as well, right, that are going to come out from the pit prison when that pit prison is open. And I think they will be the leaders for this Gog war, and that you will also have a, let's call it a kind of being like the ancient understanding of a unicorn horse. That was a horse that giants rode on into battle. But this is different by the description. It's a different chimera. Unicorns were a chimera being, but they look different than this. But this is going to be an advanced technological creature for these beings to sit on and ride in. There's going to have advanced technical weapons, and they can destroy things that the ones who come up out of the abyss as physical beings, as opposed to disembodied spirits, aren't allowed to destroy the earth. So they're two different beings by the details. There's not contradiction, but they're and the descriptions of the ones that are the scorpion beings in that have first come out under the leader of Abaddon and Apollyon, their description is different than the riders and the horses. Subtle, but different. And the Locust army is an allegory for a great army, and it's used several times, and I highlight that term Locust armies and when they're used in the first parts of the book, and then we'll connect that into this Joel 1 and 2 war and how that connects into Revelation 9 and Ezekiel 38 and 39. So these things that come out are the other ones that Ezekiel 32 talks about that are in the pit prison, and that's the mighty, which is El, as in the fallen angels. And so these are fallen angels that are led by Abaddon Apollyon. That, I make the case is Azazel is the leader of the Watchers, as we get that out of the book of Enoch. But whoever the leader is, he leads these crazy scorpion beings that are going to plague the earth and sting people for 5 months, and they're going to seek death but aren't going to be able to achieve death. And that the only ones that they're not allowed to punish are those with the seal of God on them. So we know that includes the 144,000 who have a seal. And I pray and hope that that is like the seal that we have as being faithful of Jesus, that we have the seal of God on us that will protect us. But there will be this destruction on the earth of these beings. And these are something that we don't really get told about in the Bible, but there is a key that they're scorpion, and the Hebrew word for scorpion is a crab, ACHURAB. Now, what's interesting about that is there are some beings that are talked about in Sumerian mythology, in Central American mythology and religious natures, and in Egyptian and other places around the world that describe a similar being. And they're called in Sumeria the Akraba Malu and or the Gurta Balu. And there's reliefs, etchings all over the Middle East with these creatures. And so what I do is I take those descriptions and I put them in one column of what comes out of Revelation 9 and these ones, and they're identical. So what are these things that are recorded in prehistory in other religions? Well, the standard sort of allegory of their history is that, and I'll use the Sumerian one, is that Tiamat, consort of Absu before the flood, created an order of warrior kind of beings, and they're called the Gurtabalu or the Krabamalu, depending on which language you're taking that out of. In that they were created to protect the thrones. They were created to protect the palaces. They were created to protect the temples and the gateways to the other world. And so it's amazing that you have these beings that are identical to what the Bible talks about. So there must have been these beings in prehistory, and you also see these things in the Epic of Gilgamesh. So they're even around a short time after the flood, seemingly, and they have the power to destroy the world, which is why restrictions are put on them. And so I make a case that these might be cherubim, and here's how I get there. One is that if you look at Anunnaki reliefs in the Middle East, you see them doing this ritual around this, what some people might term as a technology, or I've heard it as the tree of life as well, but they're doing rituals with these crystals or pine cones and these bags and stuff like that. And there's two different kinds of those depictions. It's the same ritual, just different kinds of beings, similar but different. The only difference, I mean, they both have wings, they're both of these stocky creatures or giant-like. One has the face of a human that looks like a dark-haired Gilgamesh or Nimrod, as they're typically depicted as, and the other one has a eagle's or a bird face. Well, in these kinds of creatures, that is classified by some researchers as part of the Akraba Malu. And so cherubim have a bird face, a human face, a lion face, and a bull face. And when they take their physical form, create their oikotarian, they would take one of those heads. So the extension would be as if they had produced giants that say like a Gilgamesh, that maybe the mother goddess Nin was a cherubim and had a human face and passed on the dark hair and big dark beard versus the red hair and blonde hair. But if they had a bird face, then they would create offspring like that. But getting away from that sort of rabbit hole is because that's almost a show in itself. But these aren't what walk out of the pit prison, even though they're equated by some researchers as the same. So we get another analogy that's in the Bible that I think helps explain who these are. The Watchers include seraphim, cherubim, ophanim, and archangels. And the seraphim we know as dragon-faced, serpent, six-winged angels. And then we get these really weird things that fallen angels like Azazel are equated with, which are goat gods, satyrs. And satyr is the Hebrew word, compounded word for devil goat god. And it's compounded with sa and sarah for meaning hairy, and words like that. And Air, and a hairy goat as well. And Air, which is the Hebrew word for watcher, as watcher is translated from Daniel 4, out of Air in Hebrew. So Sair is some sort of hairy watcher. Has to be one of the four. And yet in the occult, they have these goat gods that are associated with angels that we would understand as seraphim. So I think those are degraded seraphim. And not all of them went to the pit prison right away. But we see these goat gods show up after the flood. And we have satyrs talked about in the Bible in Isaiah 13 and Isaiah 34. And they're going to be back again dancing at the destruction of Babylon in Isaiah 13 and also in Isaiah 34. So I think they're coming out of the abyss. But also these other ones, and I think these are degraded cherubim watchers that did the same crimes as the seraphim watchers. So that's my speculation, but I lay a case out with the details and provide biblical passages that I think will surprise people.
However it all plays out, before they are unleashed into our world, the gravitational communication aspect becomes more obvious when we consider these prophecies. It's possible that the LHC at CERN will detect evidence of gravitons, which in turn could lead to a communication device to higher dimensional entities. I mean, after all, what particle but the graviton could best represent fallen angels? We even have reference to falling, an effect caused by gravity, in the description of the star angel that opens the bottomless pit. Obviously. Now, before we continue, I should mention that Prophecy Watchers is putting on a new prophecy conference in Branson, Missouri, and is offering live streaming to all of you. And I have all of that information. I'm going to be speaking there, obviously. I'm going to be speaking there. Really looking forward to it. I have all the information linked in the description below, but the main highlight is to click on that link and then use the promo code Peck Branson, all one word, all caps, PECKBRANSON. And again, that is in the description below as well. But use that promo code to sign up, and then you get to enjoy the conference. And the conference goes from December 5th through 8th of this year. But those videos will be available if you sign up for the live streaming thing. You'll still have those for a while after that. And for more information about the speakers and topics, you can visit BransonChristmasProphecyConference.com, linked below, and check all that out. So I'd love to see you there. Love to have you live stream and sign up again. That promo code is Peck Branson, all caps, all one word. Concerning the economically unstable times that we live in, it is a great idea to convert some of your savings into real money. Now, there is a big difference between real money and what we call money, which is actually just currency. So our dollar is currency, which fluctuates. Real money, on the other hand, like silver, for example, is a store of value over time. The best way to think of it is like this. If you had saved $1,000 in cash back in the late 60s, the late 1960s, that $1,000 would still be $1,000 technically, but it would buy you significantly less today due to inflation. Now, if you had saved that same $1,000 in silver back in the 1960s, today it would be worth around $28,000. So one of the best ways to protect your purchasing power is in real money, more specifically silver. You can buy and have the metal shipped discreetly to your door, and what most people don't know is that you can actually convert your IRA or even a 401k into physical silver rather than having all of your life savings tied up in the paper fiat system, which is subject to hyperinflation. Go to dailyrenegade.com and click on the Cornerstone Assets Metals banner. This is the only company that I personally trust with this kind of thing. Click on that and sign up to get your free silver report today. One of the financial experts will speak with you to find out the best way to protect your savings going forward in these uncertain times. Okay, let's get right back into it. Now, it's entirely possible that these locusts are actually the direct antithesis of the cherubim that Ezekiel saw in chapter 1 of his book. So, for everything that God has, Satan has an evil and inferior duplicate. Satan has never had an original thought of his own, so he borrows, he steals from God, and then twists it. He'll make it different or opposite. So, when we look closely at the description of these locusts in Revelation and compare it to Ezekiel's vision, we see that they're actually complete opposites. The locust army is very likely comprised of fallen cherubim. They're most likely described as locusts because of their destructive role that they play, not necessarily because of their physical appearance, which is described in Revelation 9:7 as, and the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle. As I show in Cherubim Chariots, again, available at prophecywatchers.com, link in the description below, the cherubim seem to be an amalgamation of human and animal appearances. Other ancient cultures seem to have witnessed these things as well, such as the Lamassu and Shadu of ancient Assyria. These beings were described as having an animal body, such as a bull or a lion, with wings and a human head. But in Ezekiel's vision of the cherubim, we see an opposite description. Ezekiel describes animal heads atop human-like winged bodies. And we also see in Ezekiel's vision that one of the faces is described as being half human, half lion, and bisected vertically, depending how you read it. Not everybody agrees with that, but I think that that's likely what it's saying. And actually, when I first took notice of that was through Dave Flynn's book. I believe I have it. Yeah, in the David Flynn collection. It was in one of his books on Mars, and he was talking about that. But so in Ezekiel, the good guys seem to have the half lion, half human face, but bisected vertically. Now in Revelation 9:7-8, it says, "And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were the faces of men, and they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as teeth of lions." Now, if they had faces of men, yet teeth of lions, that would suggest half human, half lion face, but bisected horizontally. Faces of men, teeth of lions. Now it's bisected horizontally rather than the good guys that are bisected vertically. So that could be another attribute to show that these locusts are the antithesis of the heavenly cherubim that Ezekiel witnessed. The ones that come out of the abyss are the bad guys. The one that Ezekiel saw are the good guys. And it's interesting too because we see parallels like that. Like in Zechariah, there's horsemen of the same colors as in Revelation, but Zechariah is seeing the good guys, and John in Revelation is like seeing the bad guys. So we do. This isn't an isolated incident. We do see antithesis type descriptions like this in the Bible. So Ezekiel described the heavenly cherubim as carrying the throne of God on top of them. Revelation 9:11 says, "And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon." So the word over comes from the Greek word epi, which can mean upon as well as represent a statement of authority. Now, there are times in the Bible that it uses the word epi to describe something physically on top of something else without regard to any kind of authoritative position. Much how the heavenly cherubim were carrying the true God over them, just physically, like they were like the throne of God was physically over them, not just in authority, but actually over them. Well, these fallen cherubim seem to be carrying their false god and king Abaddon. These fallen cherubim seem to be carrying their false god and king Abaddon. Now, as pointed out in Cherubim Chariots, the ancient world likely had direct contact with fallen cherubim, though they called them things like Lamassu and Shadu. And it's possible that the book of Revelation is prophesying a return of these fallen creatures. It's also possible, if interdimensional contact is made through the use of gravitons, that it will be either these fallen cherubim or the king over them that humanity will be in contact with. Now, as I show in my book, Abaddon Ascending, that I wrote with Tom Horn, which is out of print, and I don't know why, but it is. So I don't know if that's available, but I, at some point in the future, I'm gonna update and expand all my books. But just for now, I've got a lot. Even if you can't get a hold of the book, I've done a bunch of videos and interviews about this. But anyway, and I did talk about this last week as well, so you can go back and watch that. But in Abaddon Ascending, I talked about how the area where CERN is located today is thought to have been dedicated to this same false god, Abaddon, Apollyon, in ancient times. And perhaps that dedication will manifest itself in the near future. Now, given that, we may see a modern-day repeat of the Tower of Babel and a fulfillment of Zechariah 5 in our near future. And the idea behind all of this is that it's possible the mechanism of opening the abyss, at least on the human physical side, is to open a communication system with gravitons, or to breach the barrier between dimensions in order to explore what's there. And while that's happening on the physical side, on the spiritual side, God is allowing humans to do this, and an angel is permitted to open the bottomless pit, thereby releasing these horrific fallen cherubim on the world. It's like God saying, all right, you want to contact extra-dimensional entities that I clearly separated you from your own, for your own protection? You don't want my protection? Then fine, you'll get exactly what you want. Here's the false gods you keep going after. Let's see how they treat you. And at that point, hell is literally poured out on the earth. Now, of course, the bottomless pit and release of the Locust prophecy in Revelation 9 might not have anything to do with CERN, so I don't want to create the spirit of fear around it. Even if we as believers were here during this prophecy, and I don't believe we will be at all, but even if we were, the prophecy says this is only going to affect non-believers. These things are not allowed to hurt followers of God, only those who reject him. So for us as Christians, there's really nothing for us to worry about. These things are the false gods people have always rejected God for, and these people that are doing this, going after these things, these people are getting exactly what they want. They're getting to commune with their gods. That's their punishment, because these gods are not good. They're evil. And if you belong to Jesus, this punishment is not for you. Even more, you'll get to commune with your God as well, but instead of it being a horrific, abusive experience, it'll be, wonderful, beautiful, and exactly what you were created for. So if you don't know Jesus today and you're watching this, you should get to know him right now. Start a relationship with him. Change your mind about him. Believe in him. Pray and ask to take part in his promised salvation after this life passes. One thing is for sure. You will die someday. Everyone will. You do not want to run the risk of running into horrible beings like this, or even worse, when you leave this life, if you don't have salvation in Christ. You want to make sure that you're protected and that your entrance into God's eternal kingdom is secure. Today's the day to get that taken care of. Right now, call out to Jesus and be spiritually born again in his name. All right, we do have a lot more to talk about, but we are going to do that in the members only section. We're going to talk about the good guys, the throne guardian cherubim of Ezekiel's vision, and how that relates to Revelation. So much cool stuff in that. So head on over to dailyrenegade.com and get a membership. It's only $10 a month or $100 a year, and I definitely suggest getting the $100 a year. It's cheaper in the long run, and you don't have to think about it for a whole other year. So we also have other, shows, hundreds of videos not available anywhere else. Not only on Daily Renegade, but also the Vault. So dailyrenegade.com. And there's also a great social media platform embedded into Daily Renegade where all of us renegades can talk and converse with one another. It's about just fellowship. Some people have asked, why the name Renegade? Because in the current world system, the way that Satan has the world system set up now, we are renegades just by being Christians. And it's a good thing. We want to rebel against whatever authority the enemy thinks that it has. We don't want to listen to that and fall in line. So that's the deal with Renegade and Daily Renegade, because we're that daily. Every day that you're a Christian, every day that you are serving Jesus, you are rebelling against the perceived authority of the enemy, and you're being a renegade to the world system. So that's great. Good on you. So dailyrenegade.com, we got a great social media platform. It works exactly like Facebook, except no censorship. And then the video page works exactly like YouTube, but no censorship. And it's a beautiful, seamless site. And I can't wait to see you there. Okay, so if you are not a member, please head to dailyrenegade.com and do that. If you are viewing if you are a member and watching on the website, you don't have to do anything, just keep watching. And we'll get right back to it. But everybody viewing for free on YouTube or Rumble, again, please subscribe. Make sure you're subscribed, and we'll see you next time. All right, take care.